Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into it today, looking at what is, well, undoubtedly the most significant development in the long conflict between Iran and Israel. Just this past Friday, Israel launched what's being called Operation Rising Lion, a surprise aerial assault on Iran.
Yeah, a huge operation.
Reports say they targeted nuclear facilities, missile factories, key military sites, even striking commanders like Hossein Salami. And this isn't just another minor incident. We're hearing about 3 days of escalating strikes. Many are calling it the biggest ever confrontation between them.
Absolutely. It feels like a threshold has been crossed.
And tragically, there are also reports of civilian casualties, deaths of nuclear scientists as well. So for you, our listener, our mission today isn't just about what happened last week. It's about understanding why. We need to trace the incredibly complex history here to really grasp how we arrived at this unprecedented moment.
That's exactly right. It's so crucial we look beyond just these immediate alarming headlines. This shift to direct confrontation, this dramatic escalation. Well, it didn't just appear out of thin air. There are really deep historical roots. Decades of strategic moves and motivations building up, shaping every turn and leading us right here.
Okay, so let's unpack that deep history then. Because to really understand this for our listeners, we need to go back further than maybe some people expect. Surprisingly, this relationship wasn't always hostile, was it?
Not at all. Actually, before the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Imperial Iran, under the Shah and Israel, had surprisingly warm relations, often covert, but warm.
Really? What drove that?
It was largely driven by something called the periphery doctrine. Basically, these two non-Arab powers saw common cause against the surrounding Arab states. They viewed each other as sort of natural partners in a hostile region. But even back then, within Iran, there was growing sympathy for the Palestinians among some key Islamist figures. Ayatollah Mahmoud Taleghani, for instance, a very prominent cleric, was deeply affected by the Palestinian refugee situation back in the 1940s. And Ruhollah Khomeini, who later became the supreme leader, he openly championed the Palestinian cause. He strongly criticized the Shah's ties with Israel.
So that tension was already brewing beneath the surface.
Exactly. And then came the seismic shift, the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Khomeini's new government just completely transformed Iran's foreign policy. It became one of outright hostility towards Israel.
How do they frame that?
They started viewing Israel as a colonial outpost, an enemy of Islam. Khomeini famously called Israel the Little Satan.
Wow, Little Satan.
Yeah, and actions followed words. Iran immediately withdrew recognition of Israel as a state, cut all diplomatic ties, all commercial ties, and in a huge symbolic move, the Israeli embassy building in Tehran, it was handed over to the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO.
That's a powerful statement. Now, here's where the story gets, well, frankly bizarre. After all that, the revolution, the hostility, you'd think cooperation was impossible. But during the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s, what happened there? I heard Israel actually helped Iran.
Yes. It's one of the most paradoxical twists in this whole history.
Yeah.
Despite the intense public rhetoric, Israel did secretly provide military support to Iran during the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988.
Secretly. How significant was it?
Quite significant. They were a key supplier of military equipment, and there was Operation Babylon in 1981.
Operation Babylon.
Right. Israel bombed and destroyed Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor. Now, primarily, that was about stopping Iraq's nuclear ambitions, but, it also directly removed a major strategic threat to Iran during that brutal war with Iraq.
So strategic interest trumped ideology, at least for a time.
It certainly shows how complex these things can be, yeah, even temporarily.
Okay, so after the Iran-Iraq War, we move into a different phase. For decades, this wasn't really about direct state-on-state fighting. It was fought more in the shadows, using proxies. Can you explain what that really means, this proxy war era, and who were the main players involved?
Absolutely. So a proxy war essentially is when the main rivals, Iran and Israel here, fight each other indirectly. They use third parties, often non-state groups, militias. Iran's strategy for a long time has been to build what it calls an axis of resistance across the Middle East.
The axis of resistance. We hear that term a lot.
We do, and the goal for Iran is multifaceted. It's about projecting influence, definitely opposing U.S. and Israeli interests, but it's also about forcing Israel to defend itself on multiple fronts at the same time. The idea is to dilute Israel's focus, make it harder for them to target Iran's nuclear program or military directly, And crucially, it was about avoiding a massive direct war with Israel or the U.S. It's strategic deterrence, leverage, but without that conventional all-out conflict.
Okay, so who are the key groups in this axis?
Well, probably the most prominent is Hezbollah in Lebanon. It was formed right after Israel's invasion of Lebanon back in 1982. Iran has poured resources into Hezbollah training, advanced weapons, lots of money, ideological guidance.
And they become incredibly powerful, haven't they?
Hugely powerful, often described as a state within a state in Lebanon. They run their own services, have a military wing that's arguably stronger than the Lebanese army itself, and they proved their capability in the 2006 war with Israel. That was a major conflict.
Right. And it's not just Hezbollah in Lebanon, is it? Where else does this axis extend? What about the Palestinian groups?
Iran has also been a long-standing backer of Palestinian groups like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, primarily in Gaza, since the 90s, really.
Providing weapons and money.
Exactly. Financial aid, munitions. Now, the relationship with Hamas hasn't always been smooth sailing. There was a dip, especially around the Syrian civil war, but they patched things up around 2013, and those strong ties were resumed.
Okay. What about Iraq?
Iraq is interesting. The 2003 U.S. invasion, kind of unintentionally, created a huge opening for Iran. They significantly boosted their influence by backing and, in some cases, establishing loyal Shiite militias there. Groups like Asaib, al-Haq, Harakat Hezbollah al-Nujaba.
And then further south, Yemen?
Yes, the Houthis in Yemen. Iran has been supplying them with increasingly sophisticated weapons, missiles, drones, allegedly via an air bridge and ships. And we've seen the Houthis use these to launch attacks towards Israel and disrupt shipping in the Red Sea.
Finally, Syria seems critical in this strategy, too.
Absolutely critical. Iran maintained a vital strategic alliance with the Assad regime in Syria. Part of the goal was creating a Shiite corridor, a land bridge, really stretching from Tehran through Iraq to Damascus and onto the Mediterranean coast near Hezbollah in Lebanon.
That's ambitious.
Very. And they invested heavily. Massive military and financial support to Assad during the civil war. We're talking thousands of Iranian operatives on the ground by 2013. Iran suffered significant losses too. Over 2,000 soldiers reportedly killed over 7 years supporting Assad.
But that dynamic shifted recently, didn't it, with the collapse in Syria?
Yes, a major shift. The collapse of the Assad regime in December 2024 was a huge blow to Iran's strategy. Iran itself admitted it was a considerable strategic setback. It fractured that land corridor.
Okay, so that's Iran's strategy and network. Now, looking at the other side, Israel clearly sees Iran as a massive threat. They talk about an existential threat. Iran's rhetoric, the proxies, the nuclear program. Accusations of genocidal intent fly back and forth, with Iran accusing Israel of the same in Gaza. Who are Israel's main allies in this confrontation?
Well, the United States is far and away Israel's largest military backer, provides immense support technologically and financially, but also the UK, France, Jordan. They've provided weapons or other forms of assistance at various points.
And beyond those traditional allies?
We've seen, often behind the scenes, growing diplomatic and intelligence cooperation with some Gulf Arab states, particularly Saudi Arabia. They share a common concern, maybe even fear, about Iran's regional influence.
Although those normalization talks stalled because of the Gaza war, right?
Correct. The Gaza war put a pause on the public normalization efforts between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Israel has also found some support among certain Kurdish groups, particularly those opposed to the Iranian regime itself, who have even called for uprisings inside Iran.
This brings us to another layer, maybe the murkiest layer of this whole conflict. The shadow war. It's not just armies or militias. For years, this has been fought covertly. High stakes, stuff happening behind closed doors. How central has this shadow war been?
Oh, absolutely central. It's been this continuous simmering conflict running beneath the surface. It's all about achieving strategic goals without sparking that full-blown direct war. And a major focus for Israel in this shadow war has been Iran's nuclear program. Huge efforts to disrupt it without resorting to conventional military strikes.
Like the assassinations.
Exactly. There was a wave of assassinations targeting key Iranian nuclear scientists, particularly between 2010 and 2012. Figures like Masoud al-Marmadi, Majid Shariari, others, widely believed to be the work of Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency.
Did Iran ever prove that?
Well, Iranian state TV aired what they claimed were confessions from captured agents admitting Mossad involvement in some of those killings. Of course, the circumstances of those confessions are debated.
In cyber attacks too, right? Stuxnet comes to mind.
Stuxnet was massive. A highly sophisticated computer worm reportedly developed jointly by the US and Israel back around 2010. It specifically targeted industrial control systems and is believed to have damaged, maybe destroyed, around 1,000 centrifuges at Iran's Natanz enrichment facility. A significant setback.
Were there others?
Yes, other related malware like Duqu and Flame were discovered later, suggesting a sustained cyber campaign. Iran, for its part, claims its adversaries are constantly trying to sabotage its program, not just with viruses, but also by engineering the sale of faulty equipment.
So this shadow campaign against the nuclear program was intense. What does that tell us about Israel's strategy?
It highlights that preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon was, and likely still is, a top priority. They were willing to use highly deniable, high-impact covert operations assassinations, cyber warfare, to cripple the program, or at least slow it down significantly without triggering that open war. It was a very sophisticated, long-term attritional strategy.
And these covert ops weren't just limited to the nuclear program, were they? I remember the incredible story about the nuclear archive heist in 2018.
Oh, that was extraordinary. A real-life spy thriller. Mossad agents reportedly broke into a supposedly secure warehouse in Tehran, and they smuggled out something like half a ton of material, 50,000 pages of documents, 163 CDs packed with nuclear secrets.
What did Israel say was in there?
They claimed it proved Iran had a secret military nuclear weapons program, the AMAD project, that it had lied about dismantling, and that it had hidden nuclear sites.
And that had consequences, didn't it?
Big consequences. Just a few months after Israel revealed the archive contents, the U.S. administration under President Trump withdrew the United States from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. The archive provided a key justification for that decision.
Wow. So the shadow war went far beyond just the nuclear issue then.
Much further. We've seen patterns of unexplained explosions and sabotage incidents at numerous Iranian military bases, industrial sites, power plants, places like Parchin, Natanz again, petrochemical companies, oil pipelines, refineries.
Accidents or sabotage?
Often unclear, but the frequency and targets strongly suggest sabotage in many cases. Then there's the maritime domain, attacks on ships. Israeli commandos reportedly damaged Iranian cargo ships believed to be carrying oil or weapons to Syria. And in response, there have been alleged Iranian attacks, often using drones or mines, against Israeli-owned or linked vessels in the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea.
And the cyber front kept expanding too.
Yes, beyond the nuclear program. Major disruptions attributed to cyber attacks hit the Shahid Rajeh port, a vital Iranian trade hub. An Iranian water facility was targeted. Even gas stations across Iran were hit by a cyber attack that caused chaos. And just last year, August 2024, a huge cyber attack caused widespread problems in Iran's banking system.
It really is this constant back and forth struggle in the shadows. And it cuts both ways, right? Iran tries to hit back too.
Absolutely, it's tit for tat. While Israel and Mossad have publicly claimed to have thwarted numerous Iranian plots targeting Israelis or Israeli interests around the world in Europe, Africa, Asia, Iran has definitely attempted its own operations. Attacks on Israeli embassy staff in places like Georgia and India, tourists targeted in Bulgaria.
And the counterintelligence side must be intense.
Unbelievably so. There was that stunning revelation in 2024 that the head of a special Iranian unit, supposedly set up specifically to counter Mossad operations, was reportedly working for Mossad himself, a double agent at the highest level.
That's incredible.
And reports suggest Iran has also tried to build its own networks, allegedly recruiting Shia Muslims in places like the UK for espionage purposes. It just shows how deep and personal this clandestine battle runs.
Okay, so we've laid out the history, the proxies, the incredibly complex shadow war. But as we started with, something fundamental seems to have changed recently. We've moved beyond the shadows. We're now seeing direct attacks between Iran and Israel.
Yes, that shift towards direct, overt engagement really accelerated with the Gaza war, starting with the Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023.
Which Iran reportedly helped plan.
Iran reportedly provided assistance in the planning, yes. And that attack immediately intensified the whole regional conflict. We saw Iranian proxies ramp up their actions significantly. Hezbollah began near-daily exchanges of fire with Israel across the Lebanese border. The Houthis started launching missiles and drones towards Israel.
And the information war heated up too.
Massively. Reports indicate Iran, often working alongside Russia and China, launched major disinformation campaigns targeting Israel and its allies, trying to shape the narrative globally.
So proxy escalation led to direct state-on-state strikes.
It seems that way. The threshold was crossed. In April 2024, there was that Israeli airstrike on the Iranian consulate building annex in Damascus, Syria. That strike killed Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Zahedi, a very senior commander in the Quds Force, the IRGC's elite foreign operations unit, along with other officers.
Hitting a diplomatic compound, that's a major escalation.
A huge escalation, and Iran responded directly, For the first time ever, Iran launched a massive barrage of missiles and drones directly from Iranian territory towards Israel.
Unprecedented.
Completely unprecedented. Most were intercepted, but the act itself changed the game. Israel then retaliated with its own missile strikes against military sites inside Iran.
And the cycle continued.
It did. In October 2024, there was a drone strike near Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's private residence. Iran attributed that attack to Hezbollah, signaling again that indirect actors could be used for direct targeting.
Which brings us right back to where we started this deep dive. The June 2025 Israeli strikes, this Operation Rising Lion. It feels like the latest, biggest, and maybe most dangerous step in this move away from proxies and shadows towards direct, open confrontation.
It certainly appears that way. The scale and nature of these recent strikes suggest a significant shift in Israeli strategy, moving firmly into direct engagement.
So reflecting on everything we've discussed, this journey from covert allies in the Shah's era through decades of proxy warfare and shadow operations to now, this increasingly direct, open, and dangerous confrontation. The shift is stark.
It really is. And understanding this whole complex, multi-layered history isn't just academic. It's absolutely essential for anyone trying to make sense of stability or instability in the Middle East today. The implications ripple outwards, affecting global energy markets, international alliances, regional security. Everything is interconnected, especially now that the fighting is less confined to the shadows.
So the final thought for you, our listener, to take away and ponder. Given this dramatic escalation, moving from covert ops and proxies to direct state-on-state strikes, what happens next? What new forms might this conflict take now that the old rules, if there ever were any, seem to be breaking down?
And how will the rest of the world, major global powers, respond to a situation that's clearly no longer just a regional shadow war? This could potentially redefine security dynamics and international relations in the region and maybe beyond for years to come. What stands out most to you from this deep dive into how we got here?